Welcome to Scrunchy Time. I'm Nicole Hegstead, your fertility advocate. After 6 years of infertility and 3 miscarriages, I decided that I needed to become the advocate for my own body. If you're exhausted from struggling to get pregnant and want to know more about how I can help, check out my website at www.nicolehegstead.com.
And I'm Bee Wild, speaking up for children in a world where mental and physical health of the next generation is being disregarded. I'm here to dish out the tough love truths that we need to wake up to as parents and Christians. If you're fed up with mixed opinions and ready to advocate for your own child, check out my website at www.thebewildlife.com.
Put your hair up and pay attention while we discuss today's hottest topics concerning female hormones and healthy kiddos.
We aren't silky.
We aren't crunchy. We're scrunchy.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. If you want to hear more, hit that subscribe button.
And a special thank you to those who make this financially possible. To support this podcast, please follow the link in our description.
Hello and welcome back to Scrunchy Time. So today I have Hannah Fellows here once again. She's becoming a regular guest on our podcast and it's awesome. And we're going to talk about Yoni Pearls. So I had heard about Yoni Pearls a little bit off and on, through the years. It was just kind of one of those things. I didn't even really know what they were. It was just like, okay, whatever. So it wasn't like I heard about them and I was like, wait, you stick those where? Like, I wasn't like that. It was just like off on a radar somewhere where I probably saw an ad. And then, one day about 6-7 months ago, Hannah comes to me and she's like, have you heard of these? And I was like, yeah, actually I have, but of course I didn't really know what they were. And so we started talking about them. And the more we looked into them, the more we were like, oh, you want to do this? Like this sounds amazing. And I know I talk a lot on here about listening to your body. And there's so many things that even reading online, sometimes you'll feel your body just go, yeah, we need that. Like, I need that inside of me, whether it's an herb or a food or something like that. And I don't know, I felt my body doing that the more that I read about them. And it wasn't even so much that I was reading what other people had as experiences as it just was, I was reading about them and my body was like, yeah, I want that herb inside my body. Like that's what we need to do right now. I need it right now. And, so yeah, the more Hannah and I talked about it, the more we were like, let's do this. So her birthday came up and I was like, do you want me to buy these for you for your birthday? We laughed that like, you're only truly good friends when you buy each other Yoni Pearls for your birthdays. And so we did. So I actually ordered some for myself around that same time because I was like, well, I want to do this too. And so we did it kind of together, not at the same cycle or anything because I was way off, and I'll share my story in a minute, but I'm going to let Hannah kind of share her experience. But that's how we got into them and how we found them. And then we're like, okay, we're going to have to like compare notes. And yeah, we shared pictures and it was a whole, we won't share pictures with you, but we have a very close friendship to share pictures of what comes out of our body. Look what came out of my body.
We basically purposed that we don't even say TMI anymore because it's just like, why bother? We both know that this is going to be like, you don't even, just randomly send pictures. Look what came out of my body.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, that's totally cool.
So actually, in conjunction with that, even though we won't be sharing pictures with you, if you're squeamish at all by mucus, blood, vagina, any of these words, any of these mental pictures, this might be the time to turn off the podcast and wait for the next episode to come out because we will be discussing TMI things during this episode. So this is your only warning.
R-rated for graphic, bloody details or something like that.
Yes. My husband will tell me sometimes when I explain more about hormones to him, he'll be like, the female body is like an alien. I'm like, yeah, kind of, I guess we are. So if that disturbs you,
pretty much
walk away now. So this episode will not be for any male listeners that happen to be listening at this point. So yes.
If you are a guy and you choose to listen to this, kudos.
Yes,
because I love a guy that will be like actually learning about the female body. I think men should be more in tune to all of the stuff that we go through with all of these hormones and all of the things and all the details. Kudos if you actually take the time and listen to this. And if you are a girl and you have a guy in your life and you're like, hey, I need you to understand something more about this, and you have him listen, applause.
Absolutely. I agree. I'm actually going to be recording an episode with my husband after we're done. I have no idea when these will air, so this may be airing after I've actually aired his, but we're going to be talking about husbands and partners who aren't as interested in helping with fertility as they should be, and tips and tricks there. So if it aired already, go check it out, and if it didn't, stay tuned. How's that? I don't know when these are going to air yet, so we'll work that out later.
All right.
But anyway, so what was your experience with the Yoni Pearls?
All right. So yeah, like Nicole said, we, started talking about all this, and I always kind of would hear things about that. And anytime I hear the word Yoni or Yoni, which I've heard it pronounced two different ways, so I don't know if that's a cultural thing or like an actual pronunciation thing. We could totally be saying it wrong. We would never. Yeah. Whatever. Yoni or Yoni, no matter which way you pronounce it. I had always like heard that and thought that it was this super like hippie, almost witchcrafty type term for female anatomy, vagina, vulva, etc. And so I always kind of was like, but the more I get into things like crystals and oh my gosh, just all the things like that, I start to realize that like things like crystals, like things like muscle testing, emotion clearing, it's not always a witchcraft thing. There may be circles and groups and people that utilize these things in a witchcraft manner, but these are all things based in God's creation. These are ancient secrets that, people probably in biblical times were using, and it just the information didn't make its way into the Bible, because I guess the Bible doesn't want to tell us what to do with our vaginas and how to use crystals, but whatever. These things have been passed down, and like so many things in our culture and our history, at some point something good will be turned into something bad. Someone not great, someone with bad intentions will take a good thing and turn it into bad. You can look at that with anything. You can look at that with child rearing. You can look at that with parenting. You can look at that with sex. Look at this beautiful thing that God created for a husband and a wife, and this world has perverted it. And if you only look at the perverted part, that's all you're going to see.
Right.
You're only going to believe that sex is this perverted thing, and not even Christian husbands and wives should learn how to enjoy it beautifully, or glorify God through this act of marriage. Like, there's always somebody that's going to pervert something good. So, or reading,
even a misunderstanding. You and I talk about sage
right.
a lot, and how sage is an antibacterial. And if you burn sage in a room where someone is hallucinating because they have a high fever, and their fever drops and their cold gets
right.
better, then the people 100, 200, 300 years ago would have looked at that and said, oh, it's spiritual, like that cleansed the room of evil spirits, because they don't understand that hallucinations come from illness, whereas we can look at it now and go, oh, it's an antibacterial, like that's all that's going on there. So
right.
Sometimes it isn't even on purpose. Sometimes it's just a complete misunderstanding of science or what's going on, so just throwing that out there too, that
absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember as a teen reading the book The Witch of Blackbird Pond, and it impacted me so greatly. Like I loved the story, and maybe it wasn't what was intended to get out of the story, but basically it was this woman who was so drastically understood because of her use of herbs and plants. And she, the way she interacted with animals, not in a creepy way, but just she had this appreciation for nature, and she had this appreciation for herbal remedies, and could heal people through that. She wasn't a witch over a boiling pot with her rat's eyes and snakes tails and things like that. She just was using herbs. She was an herbalist, but she was so misunderstood at that period of time that they tried to drown her or hang her or whatever. It's been a long time since I read that book, but that was what I got from it, was that she was so misunderstood. So once again, we were presented with this thing that we had misunderstood, and the more we looked into it, the more we realized it was something that we shouldn't be misunderstanding, that we really should take seriously and try. And so we, as we said, we discussed it and talked about it, and we're like, okay, we really need to look more into this. Looked into a few different brands, both on Amazon and some private companies, and determined that this one particular brand we really liked. We really liked their policies and the way they explained things and the reviews that they had on their site and everything. And correct me if I got it wrong. Yoni Gems, was it?
I think
YoniGems.com. I'm pretty sure that was the website.
Yeah.
But we just really liked what they had to say and the way they explained everything. And so I ended up sending Nicole on a mission, because I'm not the greatest researcher, but she is much better researcher than I am. So when I want to know something, I just go throw it out to Nicole, and she just does all the work for me. So I said, can you research all the herbs in this? Because there were some that were like named oddly, like a Chinese name or something. Like there was I was confused as to what all these herbs were, and I really wanted, we both really wanted to know what the individual herbs were and what they did.
Yeah.
So she came back with a list, obviously, and that was very detailed of what the actual names were and what all the herbs were and did, and why they were good for putting up your vagina. And with each one, I was like, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. Yes, of course. Like this, why haven't we been doing this before? It was incredible. So she bought them for my birthday, and I got them. And if I forget if my pregnancy episode, if my pregnancy episode of this podcast has aired, you should go listen to that.
This will air after that for sure.
This will air after that.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we have talked about in that episode, it really impacted my pregnancy, my ability to get pregnant. I had been struggling with fertility and miscarriages for about 2 years, and had done a bunch of other things that hadn't really worked to some, didn't seem like they were working. But ultimately everything, culminated into the result of being able to get pregnant. And Yoni Gems or Yoni Pearls was actually about the last thing that I tried in an effort to get pregnant, and purely just to balance anything that might have been imbalanced or whatever, like just because I felt like it was a good thing to do for my body. So I did them as soon as I could, waited after I'd had a period, and they say that you should do them around your ovulation. So I timed it right. I did that. They recommend, now correct me if I'm wrong again, Nicole. They recommend doing all 3. They send you 3 in a package. It's this tiny little, dime-sized ball, with the concentrated herbs inside, and it's kind of meshy looking, and there's a string around it, kind of similar to a very tiny tampon. Like that's the best way to probably describe it. And they send you 3 of them, and the common method is to take all 3 and put them inside you and leave them there for a considerable amount of time. Like, what was it, 24 to 48 hours? I believe was recommended. Like, leave them in there for quite a bit.
Yeah.
I didn't feel quite comfortable doing that, and I also muscle tested myself and asked how many I should put in at a time. And I decided through all of that it was best for me to do 1 at a time. So I did 1, and I'm not someone who generally, I don't use tampons. I use a menstrual cup, but it was just so unique, and for whatever reason, I had a ton of anxiety about it. So I ended up only leaving it in for about 12 hours. Or less. It was like even less than 12 hours. I woke up in the middle of the night and was just like, I can't leave this in my body any longer. I don't know why. I'm just having a moment. And so I decided to take it out. And then I waited another, I believe it was either 12 or 24 hours between each one. And then I put the second one in there. Was able to leave that in quite a bit longer. I think it was like a full 24-hour day. Felt a lot better about that one. It kind of like calmed myself down from this new experience. And at that point, I started noticing some results coming. The first thing was that my vagina, and this was one of the most common things, was that the first thing that people were seeing was that their vagina just tightened, like just like almost clenched up, and almost felt very like wrinkly inside. It was so strange. So that's the first thing that happened. And after I took that second one out, I was noticing like pieces of skin, basically, like from inside me, pieces of skin coming out. I didn't get a ton of like crazy mucus or any blood. That was the reason that I took the first one out, was that I had started noticing a little bit of bleeding.
Right. Yeah.
Forgot that detail.
Yes.
That was part of what caused me so much anxiety, and part of what was like, oh gosh, like I gotta just take this out. Like anytime we know, like if you use a tampon and you shouldn't leave it in there for more than, 12 hours, 6 hours, whatever it is, because of the whole toxic shock thing. Like you don't want that blood just sitting in there pooling. So I felt it best to take that out at that point. But the second one I didn't have any problems like that.
You were also in the middle of ovulation. And
I was also in the middle of ovulation, yeah.
Having blood, like you shouldn't be having blood during that time. So I think that was another problem where you were like, oh, yes. I hope this isn't like throwing my cycle off and stuff like so. That adds to that anxiety for sure. Yeah.
I do think at this point it probably could have just been not uterine bleeding, but it could have very well just been like the dryness and the wrinkling up and the clenching of my vaginal muscles caused some like irritation. I think that probably was more what happened rather than a uterine bleed.
Absolutely.
So that could very well have just been what that was. So still a good thing to pay attention to. If you use them, you start bleeding, probably a good idea to take it out. So yeah, that after that second one, I started noticing a lot of the flaky skin starting to come off, and if I would reach up inside and like kind of, not for lack of a better term, dig around a little, I would get larger pieces of skin just like sloughing off of the inside of my vagina. I decided to do the third one and left that in for I think about a day or so, and after that one was all done, same thing, lots of skin bits, lots of just sloughing off of this like layer of what looked like old skin. And that was mostly the extent of what I got from that. There wasn't any crazy bleeding that happened afterwards. I started my period right on track about 2 weeks after that, and it was a perfectly normal period. Maybe slightly heavier, but not like nothing abnormal came from that. I did notice some of the blood was like darker, like it was older blood that was being shed, or at first, like that was like the first thing that came out when my period started, and then it just went straight to normal and was a perfectly great period. And that was the last period I experienced before I was able to get pregnant. So the very next ovulation cycle, I achieved this pregnancy. So that is basically what happened with me and that. And honestly, another wonderful result that I had was that previously I had noticed a slight odor. I had never really had trouble with that before, but it was like, that just doesn't smell too great. I was noticing I was wanting to shower more, change my underwear more. It was just unpleasant. And afterwards, not only did my vagina feel incredibly smooth inside, like I probably was like, can't even tell you how young I was when I felt it that smooth before. It was so smooth, just fresh and clean, and just smelled amazing, felt amazing, and I was really, really pleased with that. And then, of course, with being able to get pregnant, that was the biggest result, was that I was able to get pregnant, combined with other things that I had done over the course of 2 years, other herbs that I had taken, other emotional things I had gone through. So it all culminated into the use of Yoni Pearls and getting pregnant. So that was my experience. So
Yes.
Yeah.
No, and it was really fun watching you go through that because you did yours first.
Yes.
Because I was spotting heavily, and so, and they recommend that you not be bleeding while you do it. Again, I think it has to do with the tampon thing, and I think it has to do with the fact that your cervix is open if you're bleeding, and so those herbs can get straight into this. They're still in the net, like the herbs can't go anywhere, but still the concept.
You just want to be careful.
Cervix is open, and so yeah, like you want to be careful what you're putting up there if your cervix is open, right? So it kind of came down to like I was waiting for like a solid period and then to go off of that. And for me, it's this last year has been insane because of the miscarriage, and so my bleeding has been all over the place. I'll go months without something, and then I'll go months spotting, and it's been just a whole thing. And so I finally got impatient and was like, you know what? Screw it, I'm gonna do it. And so I just stuck one up. And I had decided previously to do the one at a time as well, because I wanted to go slow and I wanted to see the whole experience. And I just felt like that was what was better. I didn't actually muscle test, but I just felt like that's what my body wanted, was one at a time kind of thing. And the other problem for me is you have to, you can't have sex 24 hours before you put it in, and you can't have sex 24 hours after you take it out. So if you leave it in for 48 hours, that's 4 whole days of not sex. And so planning that with my husband was interesting. Like, okay, like when can we do this? Like, it's not something that I can just go do and tell him, oh yeah, no, not for 3 days. So that made it interesting as well, of saying, okay, you know, like I'm planning this thing. And so if I do it now, you know, if I do it tomorrow, then can you wait that long, and all the things. So
it just good problem to have.
It is a good problem to have. I agree. So that also kind of would throw things off. The few times that I've done it was like, okay, planning ahead, you know. So wanted to throw that out there as well. And then it also dries you out like a lot. You need to be drinking a lot of water when you do it, because you'll even notice, like, again, this is TMI, but this is this kind of episode. I'm a more wet woman anyway, and so usually when I go to wipe, there's some sort of wetness down there other than just urine. And so when I had the pearl in, like going to wipe, it was like, oh, that's like, that's very dry. It gets very dry. So drink lots of water and be prepared for that, like, you know, you might not want to wipe as vigorously as you have in the past, because there isn't a lot of lubrication down there. So yeah, you do get very dry. So with my first one, like I said, I had hit a day where I wasn't really spotting that much, and I was like, okay, we're just going with this, because I wasn't like full out bleeding, but I hadn't been not spotting for a very long time. It was just like, okay, here's a break, we're gonna go. So stuck it in, and that was the longest 2 days of my life, because I was so excited to see what would come out of me on the other side. Like, I was so excited. And I almost took it out on the 24-hour mark, because I just wanted to see it. Like, I just wanted it to come out. But no, I made myself leave it in for the full 24 hours. And then like nothing really happened. And I was kind of like, oh, I pulled it out. It was like a brown color, like, because of all the blood. It was very, very discolored, but nothing happened for 24 hours. And then a day later, I was going to wipe, and just, it was the weirdest sensation, because, you know, you can always feel like when a clot comes out of your body. This didn't feel like a clot. It just felt like there was like something just hanging out there. Like, just, it was like, okay, what is going on? And when I wiped, there was some like little bits. It looked like tissue paper. So I also use family cloths rather than toilet paper. And my family cloths are all dark in color, which is really helpful in this situation. Like, it's really, really awesome. When you have your period and you're trying to gauge your spotting, it's not so helpful. But during this situation, it was like really awesome. And so I would wipe, and you know how when you wipe sometimes and you get those really like rolled pieces of toilet paper that are teeny tiny? That's what it looked like. And I actually thought that it was toilet paper, because when I go out, I don't carry toilet cloths or family cloths with me. for obvious reasons. So I do use toilet paper, like if I go to the theater or if I go to a restaurant or something like that. And so I thought, oh, it's just toilet paper. And then I realized it wasn't, and it was actually those bits of skin that were coming out of my vagina from this Yoni Pearl. So anyway, so then on the third day after having put them in, so the day after I took them out, I got a good size piece of skin that was completely discolored. It was like a brown, looked like very old blood, kind of clotty, mucusy skin. It looked like that, you know how your skin like prunes up and gets all wrinkly, like that's what it looked like. And I actually, so Hannah and Bridget and I have a group chat, and I asked in the group chat, okay, can I send these pictures, because this is very disturbing. And Hannah, of course, was like, yeah, send them over. And Bridget laughs to now, because she says, I find it very interesting that you sent those pictures before I responded. And I was like, well, I waited a whole day and you didn't respond, so I sent them anyway. So anyway, Bridget claims she was scarred for life, and I'm just like, we've shown each other lots of things. He's sent me lots of things. So anyway,
you'll be fine.
Exactly. Anyway, so to get that discoloration out, that was really cool, because I knew like there was a lot going on there. And so of course I started spotting again, because that had been all over the place anyway. I was like, well, kind of expected that. So over the next couple days, just lots of smaller clots started coming out. And then the next two I did similarly. And the second one was a month later. I actually had stopped bleeding, and that one, everything that came out was like this pearly, clean, white looking substance. It was really, really, I want to say pretty. I don't know. It was just really like clean, you know? And yeah, as far as the schluffing, I love that word, because that is exactly what it's like. Like you actually have skin that's just sloughing off. And then you can actually, stick your finger up there and like scoop out the detox that's coming out of you. It's really interesting. It's the most interesting experience I've ever had. On the first pearl though, I did not notice that the string to which you can pull it out was wound around the pearl. And so I stuck the whole thing up there with the string still wound around the pearl. And I told Hannah afterwards, it's really weird that these don't come with a string to pull them out. And she goes, they do. Like, they do. Where's your string? And I was like, it's in my vagina, because it's all wound up in there. So I told my husband, who is a saint. Have I mentioned how saintly my husband is? I told him, you're probably going to have to pull this out of me, because I can't a lot of people say, feel your cervix. I can't reach that far up inside of me. I have small hands. So I was like, you might have to help me with this. Thankfully, the day came and I actually got it out on my own. And there is nothing as empowering as being able to pull something out of your own vagina. I'm sorry. It's just so empowering to be able to say.
Pinnacle of women's empowerment here.
Yes, it really is. I pulled that out of my vagina. Way to go. Anyway, so there are strings with them. If you ever try it, like make sure and look for the string thoroughly. I thought it would unwind the little thingy if I played with that string, but it won't. It's meant to be unwound. Anyway, with the second one, I got a much cleaner detox. It was mostly just white skin that came out. And then I waited 2 months before I did the third one. And yeah, I had a lot of the similar experience. I had a lot more come out of me, of course. Each time I had like I want to say like a $50 size, clot / just piece of wrinkly skin that came out, but I have felt tighter down there and cleaner, and just, like you said, with the odor. We especially noticed because we've been, as most of you know, we've been preventing, and we've been using condoms to prevent, and of course that affects feelings and sensations down there. Like that has really improved after using this. I've been extremely blown away that, like, I'll just say it, sex got really good after that. And I don't know if that's from being tight or being clean to the point where like you can actually feel things better, for when, you know, like it's not coated with junk, like just from periods and detoxes and stuff like that, like that need to come out. And so obviously if our vaginas and skin is covered in gunk, like you're not going to have those same sensations where the nerve endings are supposed to be, you know?
Right.
And
And
so
if that was indeed like old skin,
mhm,
like just worn out from, you know, like you said, if it was indeed old skin, it could totally have been desensitizing
exactly.
nerve endings and all of that, the sensitive parts of our bodies. So
Okay. Yes,
it's really cool.
it is. It is really cool.
Really cool.
And even my husband commented on it. Like even after the first pearl, I said, that was really good. Was that really good for you? And he was like, yeah, it was. He was like, that was like we weren't even wearing a condom. And I was like, I know. So he noticed it too. It wasn't just me saying that. So there's definitely something to it where there's more. It almost, I was like on the verge of like, let's try without a condom and see how it feels. But we'll wait. Well, I don't want the chance of, I'm really enjoying the peace of knowing I'm not pregnant right now. And so I was like, no, I don't even want to worry about that for the next little bit. So
Well, and if you think about it too, like other parts of our bodies get worn out and need refreshed. You know, we think of our faces. We wash our faces, we wash our hands, we put lotion on our hands and faces. You know, we do things to revitalize our skin, or you know, for whatever reason. You know, you brush your teeth, you put chapstick on, you do things that heal and revitalize and, you know, get dead skin off. I mean, we're always talking about, oh, let's exfoliate something. You know, everybody's all about exfoliating dead skin off things. Well, how is your vagina any different? Yes, we know the vagina is self-cleaning, but I mean, to what extent? And to it could use a little help sometimes. It goes through a lot, you know. If you've had miscarriages, if you've had births, if you've had, I mean, you've been having periods since I've been having periods since for 20 years now. So, which
yeah.
makes me feel like an old woman to say, but 20 years of periods.
Yeah.
Come on, like, and then if you're married, you're having sex, and there's all of that activity down there. It's like, yeah, there's a lot going on, and if we're just neglecting it, it's gonna get smelly and it's gonna get worn out and
Absolutely.
dry and old skin. And this is just one way that is very gentle and safe and incredible to just help revitalize things and heal. And the herbs within them are so, oh my gosh, like hormonally balancing and so good for so many different things. Obviously that's something you should definitely look into yourself and do your own research, and don't take our word for it. But yeah, there's just so many reasons that this is such a good thing to do, and I would definitely do it again. And yeah.
I agree 100%. And I plan on doing it again. You know, like and my hormones are like, my periods are regulating, which has been super cool to see, through prevention of pregnancy, through a lot of other self-care things that I'm doing, a lot of herbs that I'm taking, there's a lot that I'm doing right now. But I almost view the Yoni Pearls as having kicked that off, like gotten me into kind of a bit of a cycle. Like it really, like I said, like after that first one, you know, a month later, I wasn't bleeding, and I had been bleeding for 3 or 4 months, honestly. Like, and I attributed a lot of that to the miscarriage because I hadn't bled at all. And then I basically bled for 3 or 4 months, which makes sense. That's a thing. But then to do the Yoni Pearls and have it like detox all of that and then put me into a cycle was really cool to see. Was really, really cool, to see that kickstart something of a schedule, you know, because
Right.
some of us have that, you know, some of us have super regular periods, and others of us have no periods, and others of us just like randomly spot for months at a time,
Right.
which is not fun. So yeah, I definitely recommend them. I recommend giving them a shot. Like like you said, I really enjoyed I did look it up. That was the website we used. They are currently out of stock. There seems to be a lot of online places out of stock, and I don't know if that's because people aren't working right now. And so they're actually out of stock because there's just no supply, or if people are buying a lot. I'm assuming it's the first. We're still in the middle of quarantine as we're recording this, so who knows where we'll be when this airs in a month or two. But so maybe they'll be in stock by the time this airs. But the Yoni gems were the brand that we decided to go with.
And there are lots of other brands and styles, even just available on Amazon, and there are other private websites. So just do your research, figure out what company you find trustworthy, read reviews, look up the ingredients, look up even like maybe if you can where they get their ingredients from, what kind of herbs, are they using really good quality herbs. Ask questions, send emails. I mean, this is something that you are putting in a very sensitive place in your body. So for sure, don't just, pick the first one that comes along, or do your research. Just make sure it's something that is safe and good and quality and well-known even.
Yes. There's a lot of
due diligence.
There are a lot of, there are several videos on YouTube that say things like Yoni Pearls threw my cycle off. And that did not concern me because, as I said, I'd been spotting for 3 months, right? Like I didn't have a regular cycle. So that was, I was kind of like, well, I don't really care. Like that doesn't bother me. But be aware that can happen. Like, and there were a lot of arguments in the comments. I was trying to follow the video and like chart her cycle and see if it actually did throw her cycle off or not. And there's a lot of arguing going on, of course, because you're on the internet and people find every reason to argue on the internet, right? But remember, you're putting herbs, like you said, in a very sensitive spot in your body. And any time that you add any herb or change your lifestyle in any way, I mean, people get in a car accident and their period gets thrown off, right? So remember that anything you do can throw your cycle off. And if you are dealing with a regular cycle, there are things that you want to keep in mind other than just, okay, I'm just going to do this. And that might not always be a bad thing. Like keep that in mind as well. Like if you end up being late a week and then as long as you are regular after that, that's fine. Like that's not a huge issue for like, oh no, now everything is thrown out of whack. Like you just were delayed a week, and that can make sense as long as you don't go irregular after that would be disconcerting to me. So
in instances like that, I wonder sometimes if the person with a seemingly regular cycle and then doing something extremely healthful or cleansing, as simple as like a juice cleanse, or something, you do a Whole30 diet, or you do something that is healthful for your body, you make some change in your lifestyle or diet or anything like that. It's one of those instances where I wonder, did your cycle need a kick in the pants? It seemed regular. Was it really regular in the right way? Like, are you noticing you're suddenly in cycle with the moon? Are you noticing that you're in cycle with your best friend? Like, are you, is there some reason? You just got to look at all the angles and just say, okay, well, I did something good for my body. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting a bad result. This isn't a bad result. This is something that I need to look into and go, okay, why did that happen? Why is my period now a week later than it was? Why did I skip a whole month? Like, what happened that reset something? Like, there's always an answer, and sometimes you have to just dig around for it and make your assumptions and talk to a friend or whatever. But just don't assume that it's always like a bad thing. When you've done something really good for yourself, don't assume that the results are bad.
Absolutely.
That's I think where like herbs and anything gets a bad name, because there's as many good reviews for Yoni Pearls as there's twice as many bad ones. Like you can always find a bad review for something. It doesn't matter what it is. You're gonna find somebody who had some sort of bad experience. And there's a ton of people that say, oh, this is the worst thing. It's gonna throw all your hormones off. Well, maybe your hormones needed thrown off so they could get back to what is what is really normal for you. Maybe there was something
maybe
else going on.
Like there are 40, I actually have a test that I put all of my clients through. There's 41 symptoms of a hormone imbalance for the hormone imbalance that I treat. 41. There's 3 other hormone imbalances on top of the 4 that I treat. So there's probably 70 different symptoms for different hormone imbalances. Yeah. And irregular periods is one symptom. So remember that just because you have regular periods doesn't mean that your hormones are spot on like that. And honestly, PMS is the first symptom that most women notice when their hormones are going out of whack. So the concept that a woman is supposed to be a witch flying around on a broom for 1 week out of the month, that is a hormone imbalance that needs to be corrected. And I'll be honest, like there's other ones like brain fog is actually a sign of a hormone imbalance. So how many of us are running around with brain fog that have regular periods? Like, there's a lot of us out there, I shouldn't say us because I'm not one of them. I don't have regular periods, but I'm just saying like so many women are like, oh, well, I have my period every month. Like everything's fine. You don't know that it is because there's 69 other symptoms of hormone imbalances that I can almost guarantee you probably have. Like, I actually have yet to find a woman who does not have a hormone imbalance, honestly. So keep that in mind as well. Just because you're regular and you're thrown off, like it's probably not throwing off your hormones. It's probably putting them on track. And it just appears to be throwing things off for you because the one symptom you don't have of a hormone imbalance was thrown off, so there's that. Yeah.
And it could be that maybe it's as simple as something that needed healed,
Exactly.
Maybe your body needed to say, okay, we're going to take a break from periods this month and we're going to heal something further, deeper.
Absolutely.
Maybe there was some issue with your cervix. Maybe there was an issue in your uterus or your ovaries, your fallopian tubes. We're not just period machines. We are this complex system.
Yeah.
And if one part needs healing in some way, it's gonna throw other parts off. It's gonna cause a kink in the system. Like we are this complex system that everything needs to be in place and healed to keep moving.
Absolutely.
And you throw a wrench in the system in one place, and it's gonna throw other things off. So in using the Yoni Pearls, if you notice what seems like normal to you suddenly not being normal, well, maybe something else is being healed. Maybe maybe your body is focusing on a different part other than making you have a period right now.
Yes.
Let that just be. Let that just do what it's doing and see what happens afterwards. As long as you are not in pain, as long as you are not, having horrible, horrible symptoms of throwing up or fainting or anything like that, heavy hemorrhage-like bleeding, it's not something to necessarily freak out about. Yes, absolutely. Keep in contact with someone medical, keep in contact with your whomever you see. Keep someone aware of your symptoms so you're not in the dark just stumbling around doing this by yourself. But don't freak out just because one tiny symptom goes wrong. Just like
absolutely. I'll even share a quick story about that. So this last month, I started my period the month before on the new moon, which I was really proud of. It's something that I've been trying to regulate with the moon. And started my period, everything went normally, stopped bleeding. It was perfect. It was like, oh, perfect period. And then halfway through the month, I had a rather emotional, stressful, anxiety-inducing incident with a social media situation that I won't go into a lot of details here, but I decided to deal with it in a certain way. We'll just put it like that. And as I was dealing with it, the process that was going to take a couple of hours. And as I was dealing with the process of healing from that situation, I started to cramp, like in my abdomen. I was cramping. I was like, that's really weird. But I kept going. And like, as I was doing this process, like it felt like weight was being lifted off my shoulders and I was feeling more relaxed about the whole situation and just like breathing deeper and feeling like this was the right choice. And I'm so glad that I did this. And when I stood up from my desk, I literally felt myself like gush down there. And so ran to the bathroom, and I passed 2 to 3 very large clots in the middle of my cycle when I am not supposed to be bleeding. And at first, no, not even at first, like normally, so if that had happened to me 3 years ago, I would have been like, crap, what's going on now? But literally this time I was like, well, clearly I was holding on to something I shouldn't have been holding on to. Like, this is what emotion clearing teaches us, that we store emotions in our bodies in certain places. Clearly I needed to shed this, and did not shed it at the appropriate time that it should have been shedded, and was holding on to it because of the stress and anxiety of this situation on social media. And to just let that go also allowed my body to let this other thing go. And I've actually been spotting ever since, until this new moon, when I was actually getting frustrated about it, because I was like, well, how am I going to start? Like, this is throwing off my period now. No, during the new moon, day before this new moon, I started bleeding fresh red blood versus spotting dark brown blood. And I'm counting that as a whole new period. So keep that in mind, that there's an amount of cleansing that happens with different things, that you might start spotting from something emotional or stressful. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's your body saying, okay, we're going to clean this out. We're going to cope with this, and it's going to be okay. And you might still be experiencing a regular cycle while you're spotting. Like that is something that's completely possible. And I'm only sharing that to share that was from the outside looking at that looks really bad, because you're spotting and you're losing clots in the middle of your cycle, and there's breakthrough bleeding and a whole bunch of things. But clearly, if you include the story about the social media, that's a healing process. Clearly there's healing going on there, and relief and things like that. So anyway, I share that to illustrate what we're trying to say, of just because it looks bad, it might not be. So
it's a good reminder, if nothing else, that we are such whole beings.
Yes.
We are not one system exclusive from another. Our systems all work together. We were created so beautifully and so uniquely that it all works together. And even in saying, and we talk about this more in my pregnancy podcast, but we even in saying the Yoni Pearls helping me get pregnant, well, there's 2 years of information that I'm not going to get into in this podcast, but simply put, there's 2 years worth of herbal experimentation and a tea that I drank, and this huge emotional trauma that I healed from, was working to heal through from my first miscarriage, and this whole just huge amount of stuff I dug through emotionally, leading up to the use of the Yoni Pearls. And the use of the Yoni Pearls was like the last thing my body needed to say, okay, let's have a baby now. It was this all-inclusive thing. So you never can just treat one part of your body. If you're having irregular periods, if you're having hormonal imbalance symptoms, you don't just treat your uterus, don't just treat your ovaries, treat your heart, treat your mind, treat your stomach, treat your anything, all of the things. You're whole beings, and we deserve to be treated as such. And we do ourselves a disservice to just focus on one specific part of ourselves and not heal the whole.
And we do a disservice to that body part. We do our womb a disservice to only treat our womb. And we do our heart a disservice to ignore it. And we do our entire body a disservice to just say, okay, well, you're not doing what we want you to do, so we're just going to inject you with progesterone and make your body do what we want it to do. Like, no, we need to heal this at the source. So.
And it's a lot of work.
It is.
It is not easy. It is not simple to dig into the depths of your soul and your heart and clean out all of the trauma and all of the junk, and it's gonna go dark before it gets light, and even with the use of holistic remedies, it's gonna take a while. I always get so frustrated when cold season comes around. For example, cold season comes around, flu season comes around, and suddenly everybody gets sick and then wants to take elderberry syrup, and I'm like, that's not actually how it works. You needed to be taking that 6 months ago for a maintenance dose to build up your immune system. But in our culture, specifically our culture as Americans, we want the quick fix. We want whatever is going to make it happen with the least amount of work or thought on our part, and it's going to make whatever happen quickly. We just want to get pregnant. We don't want to dig into our emotions. We just want to get pregnant. So what's the magic bullet? What's going to get the best result the fastest? And that's not what we need.
Right.
That's not what we need. If it does work quickly for you, great. You're
Right.
one of the people that didn't have to go through 2 to 10 years of emotional baggage and dealing with everything you've ever been through in your life and every thought you've ever thought in your life, and sorting through all that and trying a new tea and trying a new supplement. It takes time, it takes work, and it is frustrating sometimes. And I don't want to gloss over that fact that sometimes in the last 2 years of my personal journey, it has been incredibly frustrating. And I've had moments where I'm just like, whatever, I give up. Like, I'm not doing this. This is too much. This is too much. I don't want to do this anymore. And then Nicole usually kicks me in the pants and says, come on, get back on the horse. Let's go. Have your pity party, and now let's get going here.
Well, I wanted to throw out there too, a lot of women who do get pregnant right away, like, they haven't corrected their hormones. And because they haven't corrected their hormones, they're passing that hormone imbalance to their baby. And it's very important to recognize that if you don't fix this from the ground up, if you do fertility treatments the conventional way, you are passing on whatever you're struggling with to your child. And if it's a little boy, you probably are, and you're filled with a high estrogen problem, that's going to be a problem for your son. And it's going to be a problem for your daughter, because they're going to experience the same exact type of infertility as you're going to experience. Now, there are ways to correct that once you have your baby. Obviously, you would want to wait till they've hit puberty and all of that to start dealing with things. But, well, that's not true. I'm sorry. There are other things you can do as children, but there's specific hormone addressing things you can do once they've hit puberty. But my point to this is, the ones who get pregnant right away, they often don't realize they're going to have other things to deal with down the road. This has to be addressed. Your emotional traumas have to be addressed at some point or another. You can bury them all you want, but they're going to come up later. And you can either dig into that now and face it and deal with it, or you can lash out at your children while you raise them and become one of those really mean old people who's grumpy all the time because you've buried these things in your soul for so long. Like, it's going to come up sooner or later. And that's just the emotional side. We aren't dealing with, your hormones or your health or your gut health or your blood sugar. Like, these are all things that need to be addressed in your fertility journey so that you don't have to deal with them later. And that's the point of what I do with my coaching, is to make sure that this isn't a problem later. So yeah, I mean, it's great when it works right away. And I'm happy for those women when it's like, oh, congratulations, you got pregnant and you carried determined. This is beautiful. But yeah, you got a lot of work to do now with a baby. So there's that, So it's one of those things where it's hard always. Like, this just looks harder from the front. That's the only difference, But like, honestly, I'd rather go through this when healing and then get pregnant and say, okay, we're good. There's still stuff on the other side of that as well.
Right. Like, as someone who has experienced that personally, I got pregnant right away. No trying needed. First time was the charm with my son 4 years ago. And it was for all intents and purposes, from the outside looking in, it was the perfect pregnancy. I was also, not eating very much at that point. And looking back on my life at that point, I know for a fact I was very malnourished. I was on an elimination diet that was not doing for me what I thought it was going to do, other than making me skinny and malnourished, and that was not good for me. But I had this beautiful pregnancy and added back a bunch of things within pregnancy because I knew I was lacking in some certain areas. But gave birth to this big, beautiful boy with a great labor, long labor, but great labor. But for, from the outside looking in, it looked perfect. Everything was great. I didn't have any nausea. I wasn't fatigued. I had energy. All the things that most people would look for in a perfect pregnancy, easy to conceive, etc. And I would have never even imagined that, based on that experience, I would have never imagined that I would suddenly 2 years later have this great hormonal issue where I was losing babies and couldn't get pregnant no matter what I did, not for lack of trying, not for lack of trying to figure this out. It looked perfect, but it wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
And had I not gone through that, had I not gone through the infertility and the losses, I would have never dug into all that I needed to dig into.
Yeah.
And honestly, this pregnancy, despite all of the stress that it has took to keep this pregnancy and the great emotional leaps and bounds that I've had to take with grieving, and pregnancy after loss is so like crazy and multifaceted, and it's a whole thing. But I can say without a shadow of doubt, there has been a lot less anxiety. I feel so much more at peace with this pregnancy, especially the further along I get. Looking back to my pregnancy with my son, I was racked with anxiety 24/7. I was looking at birth going, oh my gosh, like how am I ever going to get through that? Like I didn't know what I was going to do with this little baby. And then once he was here, it was like anxiety just doubled, tripled, quadrupled. I ended up with mastitis 4 times in the first 2 months because I was so incredibly anxious about everything and didn't know what I was doing. And there was other issues as well. But the point is that I don't look healthier now. Yes, I am a very healthy, for all intents and purposes, person. I am a very holistic, crunchy person, but I also like ice cream. I had a York peppermint patty to help my headache this morning because that amazingly, for some reason, does wonders for both nausea and my headaches right now. I can't explain it. I don't know. Maybe it's the peppermint, maybe it's the chocolate, who knows? But for some reason,
it works.
Me 4 years ago would have died in shock over the thought of me eating a peppermint patty right now for a headache. Like,
yes, you would have.
God,
you would have given me a lecture about somebody else for 4 hours. About eating it. Yes, I remember the you of 4 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, crazy. But emotionally and physically, and removing so much anxiety over things that so many things has just given me a health and a hormonal balance and emotional balance that I never ever would have expected. So yeah, we are whole beings. We deserve to be treated as such. It's just, we are amazing creatures and we need to be treating ourselves as such.
We really are.
So yeah.
I agree. So the lesson of that is treat your body as a whole and check out Yoni Pearls because they're cool. You'll see cool stuff come out of your body.
Who knew when we started talking about Yoni Pearls, we'd be talking about emotional balance.
Right. Yes. Every time. So awesome. Cool. Well, thank you again for joining me today, Hannah. And thank you to our listeners for listening to us share our very TMI experiences with Yoni Pearls. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at any time. So I will see you back in a couple of weeks. Bye. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. If you want to hear more, hit that subscribe button.
And a special thank you to those who make this financially possible. To support this podcast, please follow the link in our description.
To learn more about one-on-one coaching, books, and other resources, check me out at www.nicolehagstead.com.
And check me out at thebewildlife.com.
Our intro and exit music is titled Happy Song by Pachyderm. The song is licensed under an Attribution Share Alike license.